Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Dietitian Weekly webinar. I'm Laura Goldman. I'm a registered dietitian working with Premier Weight Loss. And our weekly webinar of this week is about some common mistakes, especially nutrition-related mistakes that some new users on GLP-1s might make. And hopefully I can offer some tips on how to avoid them, or at least being aware ahead of time is good enough to help avoid them altogether to even start with if you're new to all of this. So without further ado, we can get started. As always, my weekly mantra, and hopefully yours, is to remember that it's the quality of your calories that matters. And when we're eating fewer calories while on GLP-1 medications, it's the quality that really counts even more because we want to maximize that value of what we are choosing to eat. To briefly overview what we are planning on covering is some common early mistakes that you or someone you know might make when first starting out on GLP-1 medications. I'll also touch on why it's important to avoid these and some tips to be able to do so. At the end, I have a few challenges for the week. Some of them may be familiar. And as always, I like to leave time for any questions you have on this topic or any other nutrition-related topic that may come to mind. I also invite you to share any of your experiences or other mistakes that maybe I didn't touch on, but that you know someone may have done. Mistake number one, I'm sure you could have guessed, is undereating protein. That tends to be the number one mistake that people will run into, especially because when people's appetites aren't very high, it seems as though protein is the first to easily forget about. And protein is vital, as you know, for preserving our lean muscle mass. And as I like to tell people, muscle equals metabolism. So we want to preserve that as much as possible while we're losing weight. And as I list here, in some trials, when they were looking at results of people who have been taking GLP-1 medications, sometimes in the amount of weight loss that people were losing, lean mass was making up 26 to 40% of that weight loss. Make no mistake that from what I've seen and read so far, even if you're losing weight, quote unquote, the old fashioned way and not with these medications, there will be some level of lean mass loss. However, it is important to prioritize protein no matter what pathway you're taking for weight loss, and this goes to show just why we want to focus on that. So some basic tips on avoiding running into that problem. First of all, make sure that protein is your non-negotiable at every meal and snack. It's got to be there, and if your appetite isn't great, let's prioritize eating the protein portion of your meal first. Yes, fruits and vegetables are very important. Having a well-rounded diet is very important, but we really want to make that protein our priority because that's going to help us preserve our muscle mass, keep our energy up, and prevent that weight loss that we're not looking for. Also, if your appetite is low, especially if you're just starting out, that might be something that's new that you're experiencing. It's okay to consider protein supplements if it's hard to get through food alone. And also, as tolerated and as approved through your provider, make sure that you're getting in enough resistance training along with your protein to help with that maintenance and potentially even gaining some muscle mass over time. Mistake number two is similar. A lot of these sort of bleed together in how the mistakes are joined up, and that is skipping meals or not eating enough. I know that there are people who have maybe tried intermittent fasting or eating fewer meals in a day or eating very small portions. But if you are already taking a GLP-1 medication where your appetite is potentially gone or very little, well, you're already going to be eating smaller portions. And people may opt to not eat because if, especially using intermittent fasting or skipping meals in the past was a thing, it may seem okay. However, if we are reducing our intake and reducing our portions when we do eat, then we're running that risk of not getting enough vitamins or minerals. And also, there are the risk of some side effects. Specifically, if people complain of fatigue, that can be a big sign of not getting enough calories, not getting enough nutrition. And we can also have a little more blood sugar variability and unpredictability if that's a concern of yours. So some solutions for this. And this one, I'll admit, would probably be the hardest one for me because if I'm not hungry, I'm not interested in eating. But it is important to try and stick to a schedule. Set some alarms throughout the day, reminders. It's not necessarily that you have to eat an enormous meal. You can have several small snacks that are balanced with that protein, or maybe those protein supplements, drinks. Just make sure that we're doing a nutrient dense type of product. So don't opt for plain potato chips, but look for something that has a little extra protein, such as maybe a small low-fat cheese, some peanut butter, and a small piece of fruit, whatever works best for you. And also, since your appetite might be low and it still might be difficult to get in quite a bit, it is worth considering a multivitamin. It's not vital, but it's something to keep in mind if you haven't been taking one. And speaking of vitamins and minerals, another mistake is ignoring your micronutrient needs. And micronutrient basically means vitamins and minerals. So essentially, when there is a calorie intake less than 1,200 calories a day for women, females, and less than 1,800 calories a day for males, it is very possible, even potentially likely, that you won't be getting enough vitamin and minerals through food alone. And I know for plenty of people, again, especially starting out on GLP-1 medications or maybe even increasing the dosage, it's very possible that your caloric intake is going to be much lower than this. And so some common nutrients of concern, I've really listed out quite a few, but some B vitamins, your fat-soluble vitamins, the A, D, E, and K, as well as a few minerals like iron, calcium, magnesium, and zinc. I did read that vitamin D deficiency seems to be the most common, which is quite interesting. But also, if you are currently living in and around Indiana, where our latitude is a bit further away from the sun, and we're also in winter right now, vitamin D deficiency can be even more common. So be aware that deficiencies aren't something we want to live with because we know that that can affect our bone health, our hair and skin health, and also our overall well-being and how we're feeling. So some solutions on this is, of course, to focus on eating the rainbow, as one would say, and focus on those nutrient-dense, the variety of colorful fruits and vegetables, and also lean proteins. Of course, we don't want to leave those out. Whole grains, having that whole color wheel on your plate whenever possible. And it is worth considering some form of routine vitamin or mineral supplementation. I would suggest, though, before starting, especially large amounts of any vitamins or minerals, definitely discuss with your healthcare provider, possibly screen to see if you are at a deficiency. If you're not deficient in a vitamin or mineral, usually more does not equal better. So by all means, if it's possible to test for any deficiencies or screen or do a blood test ahead of time before making any type of supplement purchases, by all means, discuss that with your healthcare provider. Another mistake that some people may run into is focusing too much on that number that you would see on the scale. Just remember that the scale can't give you the whole picture, especially the basic scales that we might have at our home. I know that Premier Weight Loss provides the in-body scale, which can definitely help because you can then see where your body composition is changing. But just remember that hyper-focusing, since our weight can fluctuate quite a bit from day to day or even in the same day, because it could be from water retention, the amount of food we've eaten, or some other factor that's going in, it may not be related to the success that you're seeing of actual weight loss. Also, if you are gaining quite a bit of muscle mass, you're not going to see these dramatic weight losses necessarily, just so you're aware, because muscle does weigh more as fat, more than fat, but so therefore you might see the scale seem to move slowly. Or if you see a dramatic weight loss, we want to make sure that that is actually the fat mass we're looking for and not excessive muscle mass loss. And I'll also comment that I think sometimes the hyper focus on a scale can sometimes become an unhealthy relationship with the scale, and I wouldn't want that to happen either. We want it to be a tool to help us, not something to be hyper focused on. So, some other signs of success that you can look for instead of just on a number on a scale, if you are getting regular lab draws, maybe you will see some improvement in your labs. You might see better cholesterol numbers or a better hemoglobin A1C or some blood sugar levels. Also, maybe you'll notice you have more energy to get things done during the day, perhaps less joint pain, or that you will see that the clothing that you once fit into, you're fitting into again. And you may even see some increased strength if you've been working on resistance training. And these are also signs of success. It's not just that number. And it's important to check in with yourself and check on some of these components as well, because these are also showing that you are succeeding in becoming healthier. Mistake number 5 is the assumption that the medication does all the work for you. And like I know GLP-1 medications are wonderful tool to have. I'm in fact delighted that we have them because I think it's been so instrumental in helping people see success where they felt stuck before. But remember, it's a part of the puzzle, and you are a very vital part as well, because it's the long-term maintenance that we're looking for, the continued success. That can only happen if you're getting those healthier eating habits, exercise habits, general lifestyle behaviors. And so I had this example of an ad that I've seen before where there are some companies that sell GLP-1 medications, and they say, cancel your gym membership and still see success, or eat whatever you want and still see success. And maybe people will see a change on the scale, but a lower number does not mean healthier, especially if we're not going about it in the right way. And also there's that definite risk of weight regain if anyone stops taking the medications without having developed those healthier habits. And like I said, the medication and you work together. You're part of the team. And so you want to make sure that you're committing not only to taking this medication regularly, but to making those lasting lifestyle changes. We're looking at nutrition adjustments. What are you choosing to eat? How is your plate looking? And also the movement and the exercise. You want to incorporate these. And remember, you are still in charge of those nutrition decisions. Just because you're taking that medication doesn't magically make people eat better. And so it's something that you want to make sure that you are still having some agency over and making those healthier decisions 90% of the time. So now that we've covered those mistakes and some ways to hopefully conquer them, here are a few types of challenges that you could try out this week. Protein tracking, since sometimes there's that risk of making the mistake of not eating enough protein. There's your first potential challenge for the week. Track your protein this week. 3 days, 7 days, and see when you're hitting your goal or when you're not. So if your aim is to get in about 30 grams of protein at a meal or more, try and see if you can do a little checklist. Did I get that for each of my meals? Or was I able to get in enough protein throughout the entire day? If you feel like you've got that protein status down, then maybe look into the scheduled eating if you haven't been able to stay on top of a schedule there. So set alarms throughout the day to remind yourself to eat, even if it's just a small snack at regular intervals. You might also, for an additional challenge, set an alarm to remind yourself to drink and stay hydrated, because that is also an area that we may forget. And finally, I think it's very important to check in with ourselves, challenge yourself to identify those non-scale victories. Each day this week, write down one of those non-scale victories that you've noticed. Have you had more energy during the day? Have you been able to focus on what you need to do in the day better? How are your workout performances? Or if you've noticed better sleep, if your clothing is fitting better, find out what victories are working for you and what you're noticing. And if you're not, that's also something that maybe you can reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff about, so we can try and get you to those non-scale victories. To put this all together, you want to make sure that we're building that strong nutrition foundation and avoiding these mistakes. So as always, prioritize that protein. I know you've heard it said over and over again, but it's always good to just remember that. Stick to a schedule as best you can. Focus on those nutrient-dense foods so that you're getting more bang for your proverbial buck. Measure your successes that go beyond the scale. And always remind yourself that the time to build those sustainable habits is now. You've got that tool to make it easier, and now you've opened up that opportunity to make those healthy changes that can last with you for a lifetime. And now I'll leave it open to any questions that anyone may have. Feel free to hit that question button at the bottom of your screen, and I will wait just a few moments. Well, all right. It has been an absolute pleasure. I hope everyone is staying warm. I hope you're able to avoid making these mistakes now that you have them front of mind. And if you have any questions that come up later or that you think of later, please reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff. They can get you in touch with me, or they can also most likely have some answers for you. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.